It means that you can sleep easy, that things are getting taken care of, that things are happening properly, okay, as they should. Okay, people that you rely on are doing their job. Okay, so whether it's financial, whether it's academic, whether it's my team here that gives me peace of mind that they're helping me with my cases, or whether it's my bank that's protecting my money, um, that sort of thing, or it's a lawyer representing me.
Welcome to the Verdict Signal podcast, where we feature how top attorneys help people make informed choices, avoid common mistakes, and move forward with confidence. Now, enjoy the show, and here's your host.
Daniel Gao here. I'm the host of Verdict Signal, and today we're expanding our conversations to the experts who protect what people build, their careers, families, and businesses. I have Rusty Reynolds, who, with 25 years of experience, has been battling powerful institutions and securing justice for victims, and has dedicated his career to representing victims of negligence. As co-founder of Reynolds and Reynolds Injury Law, he has become a trusted trial lawyer in catastrophic injury, medical malpractice, and wrongful death cases. His work has led to landmark results, including $27.5 million in acknowledged trucking collision coverage for grieving families. In today's complex society, people are facing a litany of hazards that don't just cause injuries, they shatter lives. From everyday routines to the places we trust for safety and care, risks are mounting, and the consequences can be devastating. Behind every statistic is a family forced to navigate grief, financial hardship, and a legal system that can feel impossible to face alone. Reynolds offers a rare perspective on where systems fail, how accountability is achieved, and what individuals can do now to protect themselves and their loved ones. So, Rusty, welcome and glad to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Rusty, let's start off from the very beginning. How did you first get interested in the legal field?
Well, my background and growing up was in the healthcare business. My parents owned and operated nursing homes, and so I got inside view there of how to take care of folks and how to treat them like your family members. And then I went to undergraduate in San Marcos at Southwest Texas. It's now called Texas State University, okay, in healthcare administration, and was working for a large hospital in San Antonio in the 90s when managed care hit, and they started having an undue influence on medical decision making, and harm was occurring. And so as hospitals were shutting down and shuttering due to the managed care influence on reducing the what hospitals could charge or paying below their expenses, I decided to go to law school to be able to continue to have an impact on quality care, but also not be a victim or a piece for the managed care influence on healthcare. So I was able to go to law school, get my license, and now I'm able to hang out my shingle and continue to help patients who are adversely affected by healthcare medical errors.
Okay, and that's what I guess that journey led you specifically into the personal injury side of law. Is that kind of what led you?
That is correct. So I started off doing medical malpractice, and then as the legislature in Austin um, started making restrictions on medical malpractice because they got concerned with voices that were saying that doctors were leaving the state, and we needed to put caps on damages, okay, for pain and suffering and that sort of thing. So they put a cap of $250,000 in 2003 on medical malpractice cases. Now that's for the pain and suffering, the loss of relationship, the mental anguish, physical impairment, those types of damages. The caps did not affect the medical expenses caused by the injury or the loss of earning capacity, but it did affect the things that are hard to put a price on, which is physical impairment, loss of relationship if you lose your spouse, parent, or child, that sort of thing. And so because a lot of cases became unfeasible, meaning the cost uh, would outweigh the potential benefit to the patient, we had to look at other types of cases to try to keep our office open, and that's where we got into car wrecks, commercial vehicle wrecks, premise liability, because every personal injury case involves healthcare because you have to demonstrate a medical diagnosis and treatment that was caused by the negligence of the other person. So medical records generally make up 90% of the proof of any damages or injuries in a personal injury case, no matter if it's medical malpractice or a car wreck, truck wreck, whatever,
Mhm.
product liability. So it was easy to transfer over to those areas and diversify. We still do medical malpractice. We just can't do 100% because of a lot of the cases that are no longer feasible. And when you think about medical malpractice, it's the most complicated and the most expensive type of personal injury because we're going after the smartest community members, doctors and nurses and healthcare executives. And we have to hire experts, medical doctors, to review what happened to be able to give expert opinions on what should have happened and how that would have prevented the harm. And these doctors are very expensive um, to pay and retain to review medical records and give opinions. You probably would suspect that doctors are shy about criticizing other doctors. And so, um, if you think they charge a lot to provide care, it's a factor of 5 or 10 or 15 to provide their opinions. Okay. So that's how we got into it. And we felt like with our background, my sister-in-law is a nurse. And with our background in healthcare, we felt like we could be a force for good and support because we're very familiar with the healthcare process, the timeline, that sort of thing. And so we're able to help walk our clients through that process, be able to understand what happened in that process and how that supports their damages, and or if it's medical malpractice, how that supports a failure in the standard of care.
Got it. Okay. And what do you think is one thing you wish more people understood about working with an attorney like yourself?
Well, for a personal injury attorney, the thing is that we are incentivized to look out for your best interest. There's not a better relationship between an attorney and client than a contingency fee attorney because we don't earn our money unless we win the case for our client.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we front the expenses to prove the case, and you don't owe any reimbursement unless we win the case. So I think to know that you've got somebody there that's with you, that's invested in your case, and when they take your case, they believe in your case, and the only way they get paid is if they are successful in representing you. So I think knowing that and realizing that from the get-go, I think should put a lot of potential fears or misunderstandings to rest because there's a lot of propaganda out there trying to demonize attorneys or personal injury attorneys and there's just not to me a better relationship in terms of looking out for a client's best interest than what we have.
Mhm. Okay. And what would you say some of the most common situations that clients come to you for? I know you mentioned several things, like you cover a pretty wide variety, but specifically with your background in medical, I would imagine that that would kind of be a big part of what you do.
That is a big part, and then it affects. We probably get more calls on medical malpractice than any other case, but on
Mhm.
our car wrecks or truck wrecks, when they have serious injuries, we are very familiar with that referral process, medical decision making in terms of where that goes. And so we're able to kind of chaperone and be that advocate while they go through that process. So I think that seeing our background in healthcare really resonates with people's initial trust to be able to come on board with us because we know what they're going through and what they're about to go through.
Okay. And when it comes to, I'll focus a little bit more specifically on the medical malpractice side.
Mhm.
What are some of the most common misconceptions you hear from your clients? Things that, like, if you're explaining something and they say that, oh, I had no idea that that was a thing, or maybe something that they believe is true, but in reality, it's not true. Like, what are some of those common misconceptions or myths?
I think one of the biggest myths is probably the consent. Consent. Did I consent for this procedure? So therefore, do I not? There's risk of this procedure. Therefore, I can't hold the doctor responsible for what's going on or the hospital responsible. And
Mm,
nobody consents to negligence.
mm,
Okay, you consent to a risk that can, or a complication that can happen even when things are done right. What we're talking about is when things were done wrong.
Mm,
Okay. And so they do have the perception that that if they've signed a consent, then they can't really have any recourse to hold the healthcare provider responsible. Okay.
mm,
And the other one I would say is that everybody that calls us usually starts off with, I've never hired an attorney. I'm not the kind that sues,
mm,
um, that sort of thing. They almost feel like they've got to get all these disclaimers out
mm,
because they feel guilty. And that's just the propaganda of people saying there's too many lawsuits, or that there's frivolous lawsuits and people have an easy way of getting something for nothing, and that's just not the case. 99% of our clients, the first time they've talked to an attorney.
mm.
Okay.
Wow.
So they're in good company, but I do get frustrated with I guess the brainwash or the propaganda that's out there that kind of paints it as a bad picture and makes them feel shameful and wanting to hold somebody responsible for what they caused, you
Mm,
know.
okay. And what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes people make before they call a lawyer?
Um, I think if it's in a car wreck case, they look at thinking that, look, the lawyer is the enemy and I'm
Mm,
a righteous person and the insurance is going to treat me differently because I've never had a claim before and I'm just so honest. And
mm,
so I'm going to get treated better and differently. I don't need a lawyer, that sort of thing. And that couldn't be further from the truth. People are not treated differently by the insurance company. They're all treated like your claim is suspicious. Every defendant is treated that way. Insurance companies are an evil necessity, so to speak. I mean, we all got to have them because they do provide um, you know, insurance for our risk. If we've done something wrong and we've caused injury to somebody, they come in and are there to be able to provide, a recovery compensation, for what was lost or taken, okay, from the injuries. And they don't treat anybody better than the next person. It's that's the one I get all the time. It gets frustrating. It's kind of you are everybody we see has been wronged.
mm,
Okay. That
mm.
the cases that we take, obviously we evaluate cases and there are some that we don't take that aren't feasible or that we don't think, we can benefit. So
Okay. And with the rise in I mean, I'm sure you're getting some people coming to you and saying that, oh, I looked this up on ChatGPT and they say this is, and based on my case, and I can expect X amount of millions of dollars and that kind of expectation. But what is some of those, I guess, mistakes of just relying purely on AI before they call a lawyer?
well, I mean, relying on AI, we get those, and we'll actually get a summary from potential clients saying, listing out, and you could tell it's AI, an AI paper or model that they've from Chat GPT or wherever, and it's listed out, how AI views their claim.
Mm,
And so, it's AI is one way to research. It's not should not be the sole way. And it can get you started, it can confirm, but totally relying on it without any other information, I think is a mistake. Certainly, you can look at it and call the attorney, and that the attorneys would be the one that you would be verifying. AI said this. Is this right?
mm,
Come at it from a curiosity standpoint, not from, okay, I've run this to the AI, that must be true. Okay.
mm,
It's kind of like you read something in the paper or you see something in your feed, you know, if it's important to you, you're going to want to get two or three other sources to kind of see if this is true or not. And, when you contact a personal injury lawyer, the consultation is free. Okay. But I get it may be the time that you want to contact a lawyer is after hours. And so you want to do your own research, that's fine. Just don't view it as, the end all be all.
mm.
It's just one source, right?
Yeah.
And I know it's looking at other sources, but it's it's doing an interpretation of what those other sources are saying, and it can be a right conclusion or it can be a wrong conclusion. I've seen it wrong many times, so it's not something you should hang your hat on.
Got it. Now, when it comes to, we were talking kind of about the mistakes people make or things that they be
Mhm.
careful of. So, on the flip side of that, what are a couple smart first steps they can take, either before they call a lawyer or when they're working with a lawyer? Like, what are some of those few smart steps that they should be taking?
I think when you're talking, if you're seeking care and treatment already for an injury or harm, if it's medical or car wreck or whatever, I mean, talking to your doctors as if, what caused this? How could this have been prevented? Those are dialogues to be able to get some more information from the doctor because a lot of times the doctors will just, keep their face in a screen while they're seeing you. And so I think having a good dialogue about the history of of the negative, if it's a new injury or you have a pre-existing, because a lot of insurance companies like to say, oh, you've got a degenerative disc disease or degenerative joint disease. Really, everybody has an aging body at some point in time. Okay, and we all have latent conditions that are not symptomatic. Okay, so meaning we could have a arthritic back or an arthritic joint, but we've tolerated over time and compensated it for it with other exercise or whatever we're doing, and we don't have any symptoms. So if a doctor is talking like that when you've got an acute injury, you're going to want to know, did this acute trauma exacerbate that, or is this something new, or is it all old? So having that kind of dialogue, I think, helps before you talk to the lawyer, but it's not an end all be all. You can still have that conversation after you talk to a lawyer.
Mhm.
What you don't want to do if you're in a car wreck is try to settle your case without talking to a lawyer. Okay. You can always settle your case, but it doesn't cost you anything to call the lawyer. So calling the insurance company, feeling them out, trying to impress the lawyer with your conversation with the insurance company is usually not going to work out. Okay.
Mhm.
So the mistakes I see is when somebody has settled their case or attempted to settle their case, and then they're just calling for a lawyer to give them moral support. You know, did I do right?
Mhm.
Did I do this good? And it's because of their fear of the lawyer, and that you shouldn't have one.
Okay. Now, with the medical malpractice, you did mention before, as far as the consent, that being one of the misconceptions, though, like even though you consent to it, it doesn't mean you consent to malpractice.
That's right.
So, how do people kind of know that, hey, this medical procedure or this medical care was not done properly? I'm sure that there's some it's just egregiously okay,
Yeah.
it's obvious, but like, what about those ones that's kind of in between where it really kind of was malpractice, but the average person just isn't quite sure. Like,
Yeah.
what kind of guidance can you give to that person in that situation where there's maybe a little bit of gray or they just don't know?
Well, you can always call a lawyer and talk with them and get more specific information to your specific case. But getting a second opinion from another doctor is a good idea to help figure out what happened and what should have happened. You're obviously dealing with a bad outcome. Now, bad outcome doesn't mean that there was negligence. It just means that you obviously have a complication. The question becomes, is this a complication that can happen when things are done right? Or is this the type of harm or complication that only occurs or usually occurs when something is done wrong? Okay. And so that's what you got to distinguish it from. And asking your treating doctor who you're concerned about is probably, I mean, unless it just he or she volunteers it, it's probably not the best way. I think a second opinion is a better way. And normally before you have a surgery, that sort of thing, you get a second or third opinion. If you're still symptomatic and your treating doctor is not giving you good answers to help you feel comfortable that this is what happened and this is what's going to happen, then get a second or third opinion
Mhm.
from another doctor. I mean, a lawyer's not a doctor, so they can't diagnose you and treat you, but, they'll probably tell you what I'm telling you now is get a second or third opinion, get me the medical record so I can see what happened and I'll run it through one of my experts. Okay. But that's basically what I would do is get a second or third opinion when you think something wrong has happened
Mhm.
and you're not getting back to where you thought were expected to get to.
Okay. And in your introduction, though, basically, and also for your background, talked about kind of exposing system failures, particularly in the medical side of it. Could you dive a little bit deeper into that, kind of what that means for the average person?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that kind of means that there's a lot of, it's almost like a maze trying to figure out how it all works with medical insurance and all that. But I guess, what have you seen when it comes to like exposing system failures for the common person?
Yeah. So the question always is this a system failure or is this a judgment error by the individual provider? So you have a nurse that will make a decision, and is it because there's improper training or there's policies out there that aren't being enforced or they don't have a policy? So you're looking at is this a systemic issue or is this a one-off judgment error where the system is fine, but this nurse who came in made a poor judgment and didn't follow the system. Okay, so that's what we look at. We go beyond. Well, we ask is that's what root cause analysis. Basically, you might see it in other industries. Is we look at is this nurse also a victim? Okay, was she or he not given a proper training and orientation to this policy to know that this patient goes to the OB and shouldn't stay down here in the ER? What's available to them to be able to get the patient the care and treatment they need, or is this something that nurse just made a judgment call? And so that's how we never stop at judgment call. We always say, ask the five whys. Why is that important? Why is that important? And go through that root cause analysis to determine whether this was set in motion when a policy was either a bad policy was put in play or a good policy was put in play, and it just wasn't enforced, or there's guidelines out there and they're not putting in policies. For example, they're not making sure their doctor and nurse at a freestanding ER has pediatric advanced life support training. Okay, so therefore they don't know how to handle a baby that's coming in, okay, or a pregnant mother. And so that's where we do take it back and we go well before the history of that person getting there. Does it start in a boardroom? Does it start at the time of hiring where the person was not vetted to be able to have the proper qualifications and training and experience necessary to intervene or perform this care and treatment or this intervention? So that's how we go back. We also, I mean, if you're thinking about car wrecks, we look at, did the rideshare company properly vet this employee, okay, or this driver, okay? The big subject matter on rideshare drivers is, their criminal history. And one of the things that's not been looked at is really their health, okay? Because in Texas, you know, doctors do tell patients when they're should not be driving. You've probably mostly heard about it with seizures, okay, or a heart attack. But there are other conditions that they may say you can drive by yourself, but you can't carry passengers in your car, okay? And so we don't see the rideshare companies looking at the health of their drivers. They're just saying you got a driver's license, you got a pulse, you're hired, you know. And so there still needs to be a lot more work done in that industry to make those rides a lot safer.
Okay.
As an
And
example.
yeah, so going back to the example you gave with the nurse. So like let's say
Yeah.
a nurse or a doctor is doing a procedure and the procedure was done wrong. So obviously we know it was done wrong. I
Yeah.
guess for the average person, how would it affect them as far as like a settlement or the liability if it was a situation where let's say that hospital, that medical facility did not have any good policies in place versus they had the policies there but didn't enforce them versus they had the policies there, they had a history of enforcing them, but the doctor or the nurse just made a bad call. Like, how does that affect the average person, like when it comes to settlement or winning a settlement or anything along those lines?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because we're talking about the type of liability. Is the liability really on a judgment call or is it systemic? And I think people, when they see that it's a systemic issue, they get more pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when they see that not only was their life at risk, there's the risk of other patients' health and life are at risk as well. And so when you see a systemic issue, it does make it bigger. It also makes it more hard fought. Hospitals are going to really fight hard to avoid a systemic case of liability. They're not going to fight as hard over a nursing judgment. Strength of liability is always a big issue in medical malpractice. It's one of the few cases where, in a car wreck, we know who ran a red light. In a medical malpractice, the doctor will take out the wrong organ and tell you it was for your own good. I mean, they just don't like to admit when they've done something wrong, right?
Mhm.
We see that all the time.
Mhm.
Uh, and so it does put a premium on a case where you have good systemic liability because that's a business killer.
Mhm.
Okay. And they're concerned about that when you can blame the system and have good evidence of that, you're putting a sign on that facility that says, don't go here
Mhm.
versus an employee who just made a judgment call. And it's, you don't blame the whole system for just the one employee.
Okay. Now, you talked a lot about the importance of talking to a lawyer, kind of even if you're not quite sure if you have a case or
Mhm.
not. So, but I mean, let's say then you mentioned that most of your clients have never talked to a lawyer before. So let's say someone does have questions, they're not quite sure do they have a case or not, and they're looking for a lawyer, but they don't know who to choose. What advice would you give to this person so that they can find that lawyer who has experience, has the knowledge, and can really help them throughout this whole journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, I say talk to two or three. You don't have to just settle just on one. Like I said, they have free consultations. You want to look at somebody. I mean, we exist in a niche where we don't do advertising. Okay, we don't do the billboards or anything like that, or the radios and radio ads and that sort of. So we don't get caught up in that competition of, but beating your chest and talking crazy. Either way on the radio, TV, or on the billboard. But and some people like that because that gives them the what my daughters would call the ick. Okay, they don't want to talk to somebody who's got that kind of personality.
Mhm.
So figure out which one you resonate with and make sure that they've got good reviews. Okay, uh, that's how other clients that they've had, um, you know, either recommend them or don't. Okay. And so if you can look at those reviews, that will help give you some comfort as to whether this person's got a good track record. Um, and so that's my advice is to look at that because that's where the rubber meets the road is, how are their clients regarding them after they have, been represented by them. Okay.
Okay.
And if their former clients are happy and give specifics that impress you, I think that's a big deal.
Okay, got it. Now, when it comes to the future, where do you think the future is going when it comes to personal injury law? Like, are there really any changes that people kind of need to be aware of or pay attention to?
Oh, I guess, going back to AI, people are wondering which industries is AI going to mostly affect.
Hmm.
It's certainly making our job. It is that, there is AI in personal injury,
Hmm.
but a lot of it is right now just document review. Okay. Used to, we would have all the medical records would be print out copies, and so we're going through those with the experts. I mean, the experts got to review them. We got to review them. And now a lot of it's reviewed online. And so you're able to do, ask questions, do different types of searches, see different types of summaries. And so that has made evaluation a lot quicker. Um, I don't see AI replacing a lawyer. I'm sure the insurance companies are using it to evaluate their cases. Um, but I think it will make the review and the process a lot smoother and shouldn't take as long.
Hmm.
So because time it takes time to review information, it takes time to come to a decision on information, and so if all that is shortened because of AI, that should make for a quicker turnaround. I think you're seeing it as a source, but not the end all be all for brief writing. I think people are using it to write briefs, but you've seen where they get into mistakes, and if they're using AI to cite cases that don't even exist, that's a problem. So, as lawyers, we never when we read something, we don't take it at face value. We look at this, what are they citing as to their authority? We look at those citations. Okay, just like a research person would. You read the report, you look at what they're relying on, you look at who's relied on this case or this report, and you go from there. And the same thing with cases, whether it's a Supreme Court case or a Court of Appeals case.
Okay. And with the future in mind, when it comes to your practice, what is the vision you have for your practice?
Well, I mean, we we certainly want to stay up to date with technology. We do have a case management software. We do use the AI model for reviewing medical records, but again, we can't take that for face value. We're looking for stuff, and then we go verify, is that true? Okay. Did this happen? So it helps streamline that. But I see us staying diverse in medical malpractice with car wrecks and with premise liability. Car wrecks are going to evolve as there become more driverless cars. Okay, the big issue of why that hasn't probably gone as fast is the liability issue. Who's going to be liable? Okay, and so once they get that figured out, then then that will take probably reduce the number of car wrecks. If it's all AI driven cars, autonomous, there's probably going to be fewer wrecks. But the question is, there still will be some, and the question is, who's going to be liable? It's just kind of like with the robotic surgery. Doctors are using robotic surgery, and some of it, in some areas, it's really, really good, really safe. In other areas, the error rate is more than if it was done by a human only. Okay, so it's going to take a while for that to get around as well. But I mean, we're seeing a lot of errors due to robotics. So people think, oh, I want robotic surgery because it's going to be easier. Well, I mean, the fear is that you got somebody over there that's in the corner of the room using joysticks like he's playing a video game. He's not even suited up if something wrong goes happen. And so it can add to a lot of complications. So just because you're getting robotic surgery, don't mean that you're getting the best skill. Okay.
Very
So
well
I
said.
see medical malpractice outlasting car wrecks, to be honest with you,
Okay.
because I think medical malpractice is healthcare providers have the largest, most um, well paid for lobbyist group. Okay. And so, I mean, there's nobody stronger than the doctor and hospital and healthcare community. I mean, it's 20% of our GDP, right? So, um, they will probably outlast the AI or autonomous the longest. Okay, in my opinion, than any other industry. But premise liability will still be around. If there's a dangerous condition that you don't tell your customer and they have an injury from it, that's still going to be there. It's still a difficult case because you got to prove they knew or should have known about that dangerous condition. So I think mainly I would say I would predict that you first see um, personal injury affected in the car wreck area from AI, meaning reduced. Okay. So you're going to have a lot more attorneys trying to get fewer cases. Okay. Which is good. It's kind of like I tell folks who call from I'd rather you not have not have the injury and have a good medical malpractice case with an injury. I'd rather you not have that injury because no amount of money is going to make you whole.
Yeah.
Okay. So, um, when we talk about feasibility and having a damage model that can support the cost of the experts because they're very expensive, I always tell them rather you be in the position you are now than to have a case because if you have a case, that means you've got a catastrophic injury. Okay. And there's not going to be any amount of money that's going to reverse that. Okay. Might make it easier with money to help take care of the lost income and that sort of thing, but you still have the physical injury. You still have the pain. and the physical impairment.
Okay. Well, Rusty, thank you for sharing that. I do have one last question for you, but
Sure,
before I ask it, I do want to point people to your website at rrlfirm.com.
that's
Now,
right.
last question for you, Rusty. What does peace of mind mean to you?
Peace of mind means to me that I guess it depending on the context, but it means that you can sleep easy, that things are getting taken care of, that things are happening properly, okay, as they should, okay. People that you rely on are doing their job, okay. So whether it's financial, whether it's academic, whether it's my team here that gives me peace of mind that they're helping me with my cases, or whether it's my bank that's protecting my money. Um, that sort of thing, or it's a lawyer representing me. Do I have peace of mind? And so it's also an insurance sales pitch, right? Do I have sufficient liability insurance on my car that if I injure somebody, I'm not going to be exposed and lose everything that I've worked hard for, and vice versa. If I'm injured and I'm disabled, I have enough insurance coverage to cover me for my injuries as uninsured motorists. Okay, that can provide peace of mind that my family will be taken care of. So it's to me, it's that people are doing their job and that I will be taken care of.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Rusty sharing his expertise. So, Rusty, where can people contact you in your practice?
My phone number is 214-891-6606. And then, as you said, my website is www.rrlfirm.com, FIRM. And you can also email me at rusty@rrlfirm.com, or you can get on our website and chat that way as well. Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Rusty, this is great. Thank you for coming on and thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Verdict Signal podcast. Any questions? Please contact the practice directly with the contact information provided during the show. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.